I came to the wealthy Barnes estate to work as a caregiver for Mr. Walter, who was 70 years old. The person who hired me was his daughter-in-law, Rebecca. On the day I started, she met me at the gate, gave me a tour, and shared some information. My father might be difficult for you. He's in the middle stages of Alzheimer's disease. Plus, he has diabetes, so the care is quite complicated. I hope you can handle it well. I nodded, because I felt confident in my experience. I started work that day. I was arranged to live on the estate, but in the separate staff quarters. The large main house was only occupied by Mr. Walter and Rebecca. Although Rebecca had warned me, everything truly exceeded my imagination. The first week, Mr. Walter continuously caused trouble. He forced me to drink a strange liquid that left a slimy feeling stuck to my tongue all day. The next day, the toilet, bedroom, and hallway around his room were flooded with water, toilet paper, and even waste. Mr. Walter had caused it all on purpose. One evening, I finished cleaning quite late because Mr. Walter had been more disruptive than usual that day. His blood sugar levels were also high, so I had to monitor him constantly. After stepping out of the laundry room, I jumped because I heard a loud noise from the kitchen. I froze when I saw Mr. Walter crouched in front of the wooden pantry cabinet, using a large knife to try to pry open the hinges. Seeing me, he started, turned around, his eyes wide, gripping the knife tightly and swinging it forward to threaten me. "You took it, didn't you? I have to find it." My whole body was frozen stiff, terrified because I was alone facing him. It took me nearly an hour to coax him back to bed, give him his sedative, and watch him for another hour before I felt safe leaving. The next morning, I took him out onto the balcony for fresh air. I went back inside to get a jacket, and when I returned, he was gone. I found him in the garden, digging in the dirt with his bare hands, his fingernails full of mud and blood. I buried it here, or over there, or is it inside the house? I quickly pulled him up, but I was instantly shoved down. A full-blown crisis ensued, and that day, I was busy from morning until late at night. His illness showed signs of worsening. I had to set alarms for certain times during the night to check on him continuously. One night, I went to check. I was startled and almost screamed when I saw Mr. Walter standing in the living room. He was repeatedly hitting his head against the wall with great force. A lot of blood was running down his forehead. I have to remember. I have to remember. I rushed to hold him tight, but his strength in his agitated state was astonishing. I yelled loudly for a few other helpers to come assist. We wrestled with him until he was exhausted and agreed to be led back to his room. I sat up all night to watch him. My body ached, and my eyes and head felt heavy from lack of sleep. Now I understood why the previous caregivers left in less than a month, but I desperately needed the money, so I chose to stay and continue. The next day, I went to the storage shed to find his wheelchair. I planned to try taking Mr. Walter outside every morning. A change of scenery might help improve his memory. While searching, I unexpectedly discovered a box tucked away in a corner behind a cabinet. It was made of dark wood and was exquisitely carved. I guessed it was something valuable, so I planned to give it back to Rebecca. But as soon as I turned around, I jumped because Mr. Walter was standing right at the shed door. I called out, but he didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on the box in my hands. He stepped in, closed the door, and then forcefully snatched the box. "Don't give that to her. Mr. Walter, are you lucid right now?" He opened the box. Inside were many papers. He took them out and told me to read them. I opened the folder. Inside were death certificates and case files for his wife, his son, a gardener, and a previous caregiver. They all had different causes of death. Rebecca did all of this. She wants my assets so she eliminated all the heirs. Why didn't you call the police? The sickness came too fast. I can't even remember my own name. Some days I remember everything, but I can't remember where I hid the box. Rebecca knows I have the evidence. She still needs me. She's taking advantage of my Alzheimer's so that one day she can force me to sign a fake will. But the caregiver and the gardener weren't related to your property because they were the ones close to me. She was afraid that when I was lucid, I might reveal the secret. The people who left were people I intentionally chased away, fearing they would be the next victims. You too, do me a favor. Take the box back to your room and give it to the police tomorrow. I didn't ask again. I took the box back to my room, feeling absolutely overwhelmed and confused. From that moment on, Mr. Walter didn't say anything else. He just sat on the porch, staring into the distance. At midnight, I and the other workers woke up when we smelled smoke. We watched in horror as bright red flames erupted from the first floor of the main house. The fire spread incredibly fast. By the time the fire department arrived, the entire house was engulfed in flames. They found 2 bodies in the ashes. One was Mr. Walter, found in the living room. The other was Rebecca, in an upstairs bedroom. The door had been locked from the outside. I did what Mr. Walter had asked. I gave the box to the police and told them everything. They launched an investigation. After 3 months, the evidence confirmed the truth. I left the Walter estate on a cold winter morning, carrying an unforgettable memory. I will never forget Rebecca's final screams in the fire, or the image of Mr. Walter sitting silently on the porch that afternoon. And more than anything, I felt gratitude. If Mr. Walter hadn't chosen to end it all, who knows, I might have been the next victim.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
That day, I was in line at the self-checkout counter at Walmart when I noticed my neighbor standing ahead of me with her small son. I only knew her casually. Her name was Jenna. The boy sitting in the shopping cart seemed to be her son, around 7 years old. I don't visit home often, so I wasn't sure. The boy was sitting in the cart, his face rigid. Let me do it first. I understood he wanted to scan the items, but the way he addressed his mother made me freeze. Moreover, the sign ahead clearly stated that children were not allowed to operate the self-checkout machine during peak hours to avoid congestion. Let mom do it today, okay? What the hell did you just say, you old lady? I was genuinely shocked by such vulgar language from a small child. The boy continued to yell and started punching his mother repeatedly. People around us began to whisper, and I wondered if this was domestic violence, or if all boys his age went through such a phase. Jenna didn't scold him or react with anger. She ignored her son's actions and continued scanning the items. Stop kicking. That hurts. The eggs will break. Just then, another child passed by, holding an eye-catching, colorful ice cream cone. The violent boy immediately saw it and pointed, ordering Jenna, "Bring that here. Mommy won't buy that." After Jenna's refusal, the boy didn't say anything more. He quietly grabbed an egg from the shopping cart and deliberately smashed it onto the floor. "But you have money to buy this useless stuff." I saw several customers leave without checking out. They mumbled complaints about unruly children, saying they shouldn't be in public places to avoid disturbing others. I also left, not because I was annoyed, but because my phone rang. When I returned, I saw an employee mopping the floor, and Jenna was bowing her head, apologizing. Meanwhile, the boy had gotten out of the cart and was still kicking his mother's legs. Jenna quickly ushered her son away. Even after they were out of sight, the boy's shouting still echoed. I went home and told my mother what I had just witnessed. My mother told me what she knew. It started with Jenna and her husband not having children. A distant relative passed away, leaving the boy orphaned. No one in the family wanted to raise him, so they practically pressured Jenna to take him, feeling sorry to send him to an orphanage. The boy's name was Caleb, and he was well behaved at first, but after a while, he suddenly became violent and defiant. My mother explained that sometimes adopted children intentionally act out as a way to test their adoptive parents, to see if they will still love and accept them even when they do wrong. But Caleb's behaviors were terrifying, not stopping at vulgar words. Neighbors were very worried that once Caleb grew older, Jenna would be in danger. About a week later, just as Caleb's behavior seemed to calm down a bit, the boy was unexpectedly placed in a foster home. The neighbors didn't understand why Jenna did this. Then, on the third day after leaving, Caleb ran away from the home and caused a scene. The police found Caleb and brought the boy back to Jenna's house. But right in front of the police and the gathered neighbors, Jenna coldly declared, "This child is not mine. I don't know anything about him." "But isn't this your son? I am not the one who gave birth to him. He is an outsider's child, completely unrelated to my family." While Jenna was continuously asserting that Caleb was an outsider's child, I noticed the boy just kept his head down. I thought Caleb could understand the meaning of those words and was truly hurt. In the end, Jenna and her husband still took Caleb back and brought him into the house. Sometime later, my mother saw a moving truck parked outside Jenna's house. My mother went over to ask if she was moving. Jenna talked at length about her life while she had Caleb, how difficult and exhausting it was. According to Jenna, 2 other families wanted to adopt Caleb, but because they lived too far from the boy's old residence, her family, who lived closer, was ultimately chosen. So, is Caleb still living with you now? No, no one wants to adopt him anymore. Jenna revealed a terrifying secret. She had secretly filmed Caleb the entire time he was at her house. All the times Caleb hit her and used vulgar language. When the extended family held a meeting to reconsider after Caleb ran away, Jenna showed those videos to everyone. My mother froze, thinking Jenna seemed unstable. Caleb even wet the bed. Haha. But before he went to the home, Caleb seemed better behaved. I waited for him to get comfortable with my family, and then used that false stability to record evidence. When the police forced him to come back, I told him straight, "You have nowhere to go back to. Your parents are dead. No one wants to take care of you. Even if someone at the foster home takes care of you later, they're only doing it for the money." Hearing that, my mother had to quickly find a way to leave. She concluded, "That woman is truly insane." Later, Caleb once ran away from the home to return to Jenna's house, but she never met with the boy. Since that day, I haven't seen Caleb again. Now, every time I go to the supermarket, I remember that boy when I stand at the checkout counter. I wonder if Caleb is somewhere being loved, or if he's still just a child labeled as trouble. Every time I recall his lowered face and silent gaze that day, I feel sad and sorry for an unfortunate child.
I am Diego. Ever since I became aware of everything, I've been used to living with my father's second family in the basement. I have never met them, nor do I know exactly how many people are down there. But I can hear their voices, although not often, only occasionally and by chance. I guess there are 2 people, an adult like my mother, and a girl, probably around my age. Having a second family of my father living in the basement seemed so normal to me that I thought every house must have two families like this. Every day, my father would go down to the basement and stay down there for quite a long time. On holidays, my father would bring food and gifts down there instead of having a meal with my mother and me upstairs. After the meal, my father would bring the dishes, now empty, back upstairs. My mother would wash them without a word of inquiry or complaint. I have never seen my mother question or show any concern about my father's second family. My mother's attitude was always indifferent, focused solely on carrying out her duties as a housekeeper. Every day, without fail, my mother would clean every object and corner with great meticulousness. "Mom, can I go down to the basement to play with the people down there?" I asked my mother this when I was about 6 or 7 years old. "If you want to, or rather, if you can get past your father," my mother replied, her hands still wiping down the kitchen cabinet, even though it was already gleaming. "Then why don't they come up here with us?" I asked, still confused. "It's very likely that your father wouldn't allow that." Indeed, many times out of curiosity, I secretly watched my father go down to the basement. The door was always locked carefully whenever he entered or exited. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, to have anything I asked for, but I was absolutely not permitted to go down to the basement. Everything would have been fine if my curiosity hadn't been sparked by the voices of the people in the basement. The frequency grew, singing, shouting, crying, the sound of things crashing. Everything made me determined to explore the basement. One day after school, I came home and noticed that my father's car was not in the garage, and my mother wasn't home either. Immediately, the thought of going down to the basement crossed my mind, and I followed the curiosity that had built up over the years. I knew I wouldn't be able to get inside, but I wanted to get closer to the basement door and listen carefully to what was happening inside. After thinking for a moment, I knocked on the door. Immediately, there was a knock in response within less than 2 seconds. It was as if the person had been waiting for me right behind the door. "Hello," I greeted first, taking the initiative.
Hello.
It was indeed a girl, and her voice was very pleasant and special.
Are you Diego?
"How do you know my name?" I was completely surprised.
We live in the same house. I'm the same age as you. I think I was born a few months before you. I'm Lonnie.
I smiled softly. "That's right. We live in the same house." "Who are you staying with?" I asked.
I'm with my mom and my little brother, but he's not well. He doesn't speak or run around ever.
Suddenly, I heard my mother call, and I was startled. I quickly ran off, not even having time to say goodbye to Lonnie. Fortunately, just as I made it upstairs, I saw my father's car driving up the driveway. Ever since that day, I felt strangely happy. I had a secret just for myself, a very special friend, and I was always smiling to myself. After school, instead of wandering around or locking myself in my room, I would sneak away from my parents and go down to the basement to talk to Lonnie. She dreamed of having a life like mine, going to school and doing homework every day, cleaning her room every Sunday morning, and helping her mom with the housework. "Try it, and you'll end up hating them like I do right now," I muttered.
Life down here is very dark and suffocating. My mother never smiles. She's always either holding my little brother, crying, or getting angry. I've never been to school. You're my only friend.
I fell silent after Lonnie's words.
Are you still there, Diego?
"Oh yeah, I'm still here. Lonnie, you're also my only friend." At school, no one wanted to interact with me or have anything to do with me. They called me the child of crime. Whenever I asked my mother why people said those things about me, she would always get angry. The angrier she got, the more she lost control, acting recklessly, shouting while scrubbing the kitchen until her hands bled. I also didn't see any love between my father and mother. The attitude and look in my father's eyes when he gave me gifts were very different from when he brought gifts and food down to the basement for your mom and you. Shut up, you devil. I've already put up with you a lot in front of my son. That was my father's voice. It's all because of my only remaining son. If it weren't for you, my wife Laura, my daughter Lonnie, and my unborn son wouldn't have left me. You are the devil. Do you think cleaning those bloodstains thoroughly will wipe away your crime? I held my breath, trying to hear every word my father said as thoughts raced through my mind. Lonnie, your mother, what's her name?
Laura.
I ran to my room, locked the door, pulled the blanket over myself, and trembled with my own suspicions. This isn't real. I kept muttering to myself. The next day, I gathered all my courage and stole my father's basement key. I knew where he kept it. It wasn't hard. I just hadn't paid attention before. I took a deep breath and opened the basement door. There was no one here. Inside was a cozy room, filled with vibrant colors from toys and wallpaper. There were happy family photos of a beautiful woman, a girl around my age, and my father as well, a small cradle with a blue mattress. And at the end of the room, a small table with a portrait of the woman and the little girl, placed next to a crucifix and a few candles. There was also a picture that, when I grew up, I later realized was an ultrasound photo of the baby.
My name is David. I was born and raised in the suburbs of San Bernardino, California. Our house was an old wooden one, isolated among the deep green pine hills. It was quite spacious with 4 bedrooms and a basement. My father said the basement was where he worked. I was never allowed down there. I accepted this without question. I only observed from a safe distance. I lived with my father, a very quiet man. With his fishing job, he was often away for weeks at a time. Dad didn't spend much time with me. The only thing he taught me was, women only bring trouble. But the contradiction was that our house always had many women visiting. They came and went like ghosts, so many that I couldn't remember them all. When Dad was away, I stayed home with whichever woman was visiting at the time. They rarely spoke to me. Some looked at me with pity, others with coldness. None of them cooked. I usually lived on canned goods and sandwiches. In the winter when I was 7, Bree appeared with long curly brown hair and a warm smile. Dad introduced her as a special friend who would be staying with us. I didn't expect much, but Bree was different. The first morning after she arrived, I woke up to the smell of pancakes and bacon. I was so used to preparing my own breakfast of dry cereal, the aroma confused me. I crept into the kitchen. Bree turned with a bright smile and said, "Good morning, David." It was the first time I had the feeling of a real family meal. Bree sat across from me. She asked about school, about the books I liked. She really listened to my answers. The following months passed peacefully. Bree took me to school and picked me up. She helped me with my homework and cooked amazing meals. Bree's specialty was barbecue with a secret sauce. "This is my exclusive recipe," she would often say, as she poured the dark red sauce over the tender meat. I ate heartily, without any suspicion. The strange thing was that even with Bree staying, other women continued to come. They didn't stay as long as before, usually just a night or two, when my father was home. Bree never spoke about them. Gradually, I stopped paying attention to their comings and goings. To me, Bree was Mom, the only one I needed. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of arguing from the kitchen. For the first time, I heard Bree's voice high and strained. "You knew what you were doing when you came here. Don't act innocent with me." My father's voice was harsh, but I didn't think things would be like this. Bree retorted. You want to leave, like the others? My father asked. Silence stretched, and finally, I heard Bree sob softly. Number, I can't leave David. Then you'll do as I say. My father's voice was firm. 2 days later, we had barbecue for dinner again. Bree didn't say much, but she made sure my plate was always full. I ate ravenously, while Bree barely touched her own portion. That night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get a drink. The basement door was slightly ajar, no sound, but there was a strange smell I couldn't place. Curious, I crept closer to the basement stairs. I intended to look down to see what my father did down there in the middle of the night. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. Go back to bed, David. Your father is working. We shouldn't disturb him, Bree whispered. Her face was pale and distraught. I nodded and went back to my room. When Bree tucked me in, I noticed her eyes were red and swollen. From that night on, Bree changed. Her smile no longer held any emotion. She grew thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. Sometimes I would catch her staring blankly into space and secretly crying. I started hearing noises at night, not arguing anymore, but strange sounds from the basement. Sometimes it was the clanging of metal and even whimpering. Once I was sure I heard a scream, but it was abruptly cut short. The next day, I saw Bree with a pale face, and after those nights, we would have barbecue for dinner again. I had realized something. Every time a new woman arrived and left, we would have barbecue. My father would seem more cheerful while Bree wouldn't meet our eyes during the meal. I didn't want to eat those barbecue dinners anymore, but I didn't dare refuse. Bree noticed when my father wasn't looking. She would give me a small nod, allowing me to leave some food on my plate. One day, while I was at school, a police officer and a social worker came to my classroom. They took me to the principal's office and asked me about my father and life at home. I answered cautiously, unsure of what I should say. When they asked about the women, I froze. I repeated what my father had always told me. They were friends visiting. What about Bree? The police officer asked. Bree is my foster mom. The two officers exchanged a look. Then they said they would take me home. When we arrived, several police cars were parked in front of the house. Bree stood on the porch, her face streaked with tears. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me tightly. Before I could understand what was happening, I saw my father being led out of the house. He was wearing handcuffs, his eyes looking down at the ground, empty and emotionless. I heard a police officer say they had to call for more units. There were over 50 bodies down there. Everything after that became a blur. I remember someone putting me in a car, Bree begging to come with me. I looked out the window as men in protective suits went in and out of the basement. They were carrying large black bags. That sentence kept echoing in my head as a police officer explained that my father had murdered at least 50 women. He had butchered their bodies, taking what he considered the best parts. The barbecue dinners, they all flashed through my mind with horrifying clarity. I vomited until there was nothing left. Painful contractions and choked sobs overwhelmed me. Bree had helped my father. She had cooked those meals. But she had also called the police. The following years passed in a series of foster homes and mental health facilities. I didn't speak for almost a year, unable to eat meat. My father was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bree was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her role as an accomplice, although she had cooperated with the police. I never visited either of them. Now, I'm 28 years old and trying to build a normal life. I have a small apartment in Sacramento, a job at the local library. I don't have nightmares as often as I used to, but they still come. In those dreams, I always see myself as a 10-year-old boy sitting at the dining table. I stare at a steaming plate of barbecue. My father smiles encouragingly. Bree stands behind me, tears streaming down her face. And from the basement, I hear the cries of nameless women.
My name's Gina. I'm 18 years old. I'm the only daughter and a treasure of my parents. My family's residing in the busy city of San Antonio, Texas. Even though I was born and raised here in San Antonio, my heart truly belongs to my grandparents' home in Modesto, California, and it had always been ever since I came there to visit them. I love the fresh air of that place, so at every long school break, I always asked my parents for a chance to visit my gramps. The elders were delighted every time I came to their door. They typically took me around the almond garden, where I could really enjoy the peaceful atmosphere that the big cities could never give me. Old-fashioned as they were, my gramps didn't watch TV, but they listened to the radio instead. I was a fan of my grandma's little radio. Also, my gramps had a loyal shepherd named Max, who's their best friend. Max was a really smart dog for its type. Every afternoon I often grabbed my grandma's radio and jogged along the backyard hills with Max. I would then listen to music, have a snacking picnic with Max until the gramps called out for dinner. Those happy times I wished would last forever. But everything changed 3 years ago. My family had just returned after a long flight from our vacation with our grandparents in Modesto to San Antonio. 3 days later, my dad received a phone call saying that my grandma had passed away from an accident in the almond garden. That evening after school, I saw my dad and mom had prepared a huge luggage. Sadness lingered in their eyes. I didn't know what's up, and sensing my confusion, my dad told me what happened to Grandma. I didn't cry at all, and in hindsight, I wasn't sure what I was thinking back then, but I had almost no emotion at all. I dragged my suitcase out and literally just went out of the house. I just want to get to Modesto as quickly as possible to confirm everything. My grandma was just fine. She would be thrilled to see us coming back. On our way back to Modesto, I felt really uneasy for the entire trip. I didn't answer any questions from my parents, but just stared at the windows. My thought was all about my grandma. We arrived and present at our grandparents' house the next day. As soon as the ride stopped, I rushed into the familiar house. I yelled aloud, but the familiar sight of my grandma, granddad, and Max were no more. The house was unusually quiet and gloomy. Max barked very loud, and when I came closer, I noticed that he's chained. Never before did my grandparents chain him, and thinking he's in a lot of stress, I released him away. He immediately came rushing inside. My parents also rushed in. The once beautiful and tidy house was now so empty without my grandma. Everything was messy. Even my grandma's favorite vase was broken as well. My grandpa sat motionless in the bed, right next to my grandma, and pale, lying motionless, bandage all over her forehead. No longer lingered on the thin thread. I was now completely collapsed. All I could do at that was cry. My parents also shared in my grief. I didn't remember for how long I had been kneeling down like that, but I did remember that Max barking snapped me out of my trance. Max had never done this before. He stared at my grandpa as if he's an enemy. My grandpa angrily looked at Max. He kept mumbling something, and without any words, he picked up his pistol in the locker and shot his dog in the head. Everything happened so fast that Max could only let out a weak whimper before completely ceasing any motions. Me and my parents were all stunned looking at that carnage. What the hell was going on here? What happened to my grandpa? I seemed to have lost every bit of sanity in me, and therefore I couldn't shed any tears anymore. My mom said it's due to the extreme grief that my grandpa had acted irrationally like so. My parents suggested a local funeral in the local church. It was also Grandma's favorite destination when she was alive. However, Grandpa insisted not. He only allowed his wife to rest in the place two of them had resided for 30 years. For 2 days, I remained close next to Grandma's coffin and ate and slept very little. My dad had also picked up a good place to rest Max, next to her. I did not see my grandpa wept or showed any kind of grief. He chose silence, just staring into Grandma's picture. It would be a closed casket funeral, he demanded. Every visitor could only view her coffin from afar, he requested. Even for my parents, my grandpa demanded for them to stay away. We did not dare argue with those irrational demands. After all, he was the one that was supposedly in the deepest grief. In the evening when I was next to my grandma's and Max's coffin, I opened up her favorite radio. Suddenly, the radio digital display showed up. "Hello, Gina." When I was dumbfounded with the device, suddenly her singing voice rang over. This was her favorite song, which she used as my lullaby when I was a kid. She must have recorded this song to the radio, I thought. Hearing her voice again, the surge of emotion came back, and I couldn't hold off my tears. When the song was halfway through, a strong hand grabbed on the radio and snatched it from me. It was Grandpa, who mercilessly smashed the radio on the ground and broke it in pieces. I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore, and that was the first time I snapped at my grandpa, yelling to his face. My parents immediately jumped in to intervene, and my mom dragged me to the bedroom. She told me to wash myself up. It would calm me down. The family had enough problems already. I groggily dragged myself to the bathroom, and when I looked in the mirror, I could see my sanity hanging on by a thread. My grandma suddenly appeared in the mirror, where she smiled at me and whispered something. I believed from her mouthing that she was calling for my name. Suddenly on her forehead there was a hole, and from that hole, blood kept oozing out. She kept smiling, even though the blood had covered her entire face and mouth. When I turned my back around, she was gone. But I did spot something on the ground that looked like a spent cartridge case. A cartridge case, and the hole in my grandma's head. Things seemed to link in with each other. It prompted me to spring to action. I dropped the casing in my chest pocket and made my way down to Grandma's coffin. I had to see it. So I pushed open the casket and tried to look at my grandma's obscured, bandaged head, when suddenly a strong hand grabbed my arm tight to the point of it being very painful. I had to bite my lips to not yell aloud. It was my grandpa. He was very close there, staring at me with bloodshot eyes and gritting teeth. I feel like he's someone else completely. The grandpa I knew and loved was no longer there. I swiftly snatched my hands away and turned back to my room. I remember to carefully hide away the cartridge case and my grandma's radio. After the funeral, my family must return quickly because we have many things to do back in San Antonio. On the day we went back, I didn't see my grandpa as my grandpa anymore. His changes scared me. 3 weeks later, I received the radio back from the repair. I nervously turned it on when waiting for my grandma's warm voice. I bursted into tears. I really missed her.
What are you doing? Stop it! Are you out of your goddamn mind? Help! Somebody help!
That was all I heard by the end of the recording. For 3 years, I hid the truth from my parents. I tucked within me the haunting last moment that completely changed my loving grandpa. Now he's much weaker, and he's losing the fight against stomach cancer. Should I tell everyone the things I know and dig more into my grandma's death?
I'm Michael, 23 years old, and I'm an orphan. 5 years ago, I had a life that many people admired. My dad owned a real estate company, so our family was pretty well off. My mom didn't work a regular job, but she helped my dad a lot with running the company. I was an only child, so I got all their attention. Life was easy from childhood. For 18 years, I never had to worry about a thing. I never really thought about what life would be like without my parents' protection. The year I graduated from high school, I went through the first event that completely changed my life. My dad's company got caught for tax evasion. Not only did he have to pay back the evaded taxes, but my dad also had to cover the interest on that amount. Because of the huge amount of money involved, my dad was prosecuted and ended up getting a 15-year prison sentence. All of our family's assets were frozen. My mom had a serious mental breakdown. On the day of the trial, seeing my dad get sentenced and taken away, my mom cried so much she fainted. 3 months after my dad went to prison, my mom couldn't handle the shock and chose to end her life. I can't even put into words how I felt during that time. At the same time, I lost everything. I blamed my mom for choosing such a negative way out. I wondered why she left me alone when I needed her more than ever. I have to give myself some credit because at that time, I stayed strong, alert, and optimistic. I worked on building a positive mindset, finished high school, and continued with my university program. At first, I still visited my dad regularly, and each visit took me an hour on the bus. But my dad seemed unhappy to see me, and eventually, he stopped wanting to meet. By my second year of college, I stopped visiting my dad. I graduated from college on time and got an office job with an average salary. I met two friends, Manny and Oliver, and we became an inseparable trio. One day, my dad's old lawyer got in touch with me and told me about a wooden house in the woods that used to belong to my father. "It will now be yours." I didn't react and didn't have any special feelings about what he said. I thought how great it would be if it were a villa in a nice neighborhood or a luxury apartment. During last year's Christmas holiday, I invited my two friends to the wooden house in the woods for a few days of fun. We drove there in 2 cars, bringing food and personal items. Finding the house wasn't difficult. It was quite spacious, and I started to like it more. The inside of the house was modern and very clean, not at all like it had been empty for years. We didn't think much of it. We just unpacked our things and started the party right away. As we drank the wine and beer, we sang and danced, letting the alcohol take over. Suddenly, Manny stood up and shouted, "There's someone! They're standing upstairs, looking down." We looked around but didn't see anything unusual, so we just laughed it off, thinking he was just drunk and dizzy. We sang and drank some more until we passed out. I woke up with a pounding headache and my head spinning, and my throat was really dry. I grabbed a bottle of water from the floor and tilted my head back to drink. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound coming from the kitchen. When I turned around, I saw that my snack was moving by itself. After I screamed, it fell to the floor and stopped moving. My two friends woke up, and Manny quickly found the light switch and turned it on. They asked me what happened. I ran over to pick up the snack, looked at it, and then sighed in relief, saying, "I think this house must have a lot of rats." At night, while Oliver went to take a shower, Manny, Oliver, and I stayed behind to clean up a bit. About 20 minutes later, Oliver ran back, looking flustered and a bit angry. He said, "Are you guys playing tricks again? You know I'm really scared of ghosts." We looked at each other in confusion and said we hadn't left the living room since he left. "Who was knocking on the door while I was taking a shower?" Oliver's words made the atmosphere tense. I told him more clearly about what I saw with the snack. Manny and I burst out laughing. "Come on, cowards. Your breath still reeks of alcohol. Do you really think you're sober in this situation?" Manny's words made Oliver and me feel more relieved. We put the food back in the living room, tried turning on the old TV, and surprisingly, it still worked. We drank and slept there until dawn. Just like that, we were drunk for 3 days straight. A few more times I saw a dark shadow. Oliver heard crying, and some furniture and food in the house disappeared for unknown reasons. But we didn't suspect anything because we were always in a half-awake, half-asleep state. By the 4th day, the food was gone, so we decided to walk to the nearby town to buy some more. We left the house at 9 a.m., and when we got back to the forest, we could smell something burning from a distance. Feeling like something was wrong, the 3 of us rushed toward the house without saying a word to each other. The wooden house slowly came into view, but was 80% burned. Luckily, the fire hadn't spread to the forest or the 2 nearby cars. I was stunned to see the last property my father left burned to ashes. Now it was just a pile of half-burned wood. Suddenly, a woman's scream echoed through the area. She rushed towards me with an angry look, like she wanted to tear me apart. My 2 friends quickly stepped in and stopped her. The woman ran into the fire, which hadn't been fully extinguished, and used her bare hands to flip each piece of wood that was still glowing. It took us a few seconds to react. Oliver quickly called the police, while Manny and I tried to get the woman out of the fire. After a while of searching, the woman stopped when she found something on the ground. She just stood there staring, and then let out a scream of frustration. Underneath the charred wood, a burnt corpse was found. The woman was crying and mumbling, and it seemed like she couldn't speak properly. We couldn't say a word as we watched the woman hold the body in her arms, even though her hands were blistered from severe burns. The police showed up after 20 minutes, bringing along a 6-year-old boy. The boy called the woman Mom, and she was both surprised and overjoyed. She ran over to hug him and cried loudly. This morning, the boy ran into town with us, and the police found him. It was confirmed that the woman was the boy's biological mother, but she couldn't speak. The burned body was identified as a monkey. She used gestures to show the police what had happened. She and her son had lived in the house for 3 years. She was my dad's lover. She also received a large sum of money from my father to raise her child. Another truth came to light, and now I understand why my mother was so miserable. She was the one who always stood by my father and helped him through tough times. But in the end, all she got was betrayal. Everything is over, and I need to focus on the future. I accept that I have a younger brother now, and will make sure to take good care of him.
I'm Carmela, but everyone calls me Carm. I'm about to turn 17. I live with my grandmother and my older brother in a rather old house. My grandmother always takes care of and loves both of us. My older brother is 1 year older than me and is like a different version of Dad. My dad works at sea, and he's been doing that since we were very young. Once a year, Dad only comes home 1 or 2 times during important holidays. My brother and I aren't silver spoons, but our lives are comfortable thanks to the money Dad sends home from his work at sea each month. What we lack the most is probably our mother's love. I don't have any memories of my mother. All I know about her is her name, Sheila. My brother says that he remembers our mother's voice, but everything else is very vague. Since I became aware, I've asked my grandmother a lot about our mother. She doesn't answer. Her eyes turn red, and her voice chokes up. She says that our mother also worked far away and would visit us one day. But in 17 years, she still hasn't come back. Not even once. I don't blame her. Mother must have been very beautiful, because my grandmother is, and I look like them. The love for my grandmother and the protection from my brother made my childhood very wonderful. But my grandmother and my father can't get along. There were even times when I saw my grandmother looking at my father with a very angry expression. My dad said, "You children must always love and be grateful to your grandmother. But not everything Grandma says is the truth." Dad didn't explain but kept repeating that advice. I tried to remember. Could it be something about Mom? Always be a cheerful, beautiful girl who knows how to love. Don't get bogged down by other complicated matters. That's what my brother always advised me. He's much more insightful and mature than his 18 years. But I always think about finding out more and meeting my mother. During the Christmas holiday, my father came back after being away for almost a year. Dad brought along a young, beautiful woman who was holding a baby in her arms. Dad said he would rent out this house and move the whole family to live elsewhere. Leave the past behind. There's no need to hold on or bring it up again. Not going anywhere until you clear up everything about Sheila. My grandmother immediately objected very strongly, bringing up matters about my mother. It's been over 14 years. I told you that she left for another man. I was shocked when I overheard their conversation. My brother pulled me into a room and locked the door. "Surely you know where she is. Give Sheila back to us. You can start the new life you want." I understood part of the story between my grandmother and my father over the years. "Calm down, Carm," my brother reassured me as he saw my body trembling. The next day, I asked both my grandmother and my father about what happened the previous day. Neither of them looked me in the eye. They were silent. After that, Dad sent people to clean up the house and repair some damaged areas to get it ready for rent. When I came home from school, no one was there. Only a few construction workers. "Young lady, these are family belongings. Please see if you still need them." One of the workers handed me a wooden box. Inside were old newspapers, dated 14 years ago. All of them contained the same content about the mysterious disappearance of my mother. I read every piece of information without missing anything. My mother vanished without a trace when my brother was 4 years old, and the police searched for 2 years without any results. My grandmother always believed Dad was involved, while Dad insisted that Mom left for another man. So what is the real reason? I cried a lot. I quickly put the newspapers back into the wooden box and shoved it under the bed when I heard Grandma calling from outside. I didn't talk to anyone about this, trying to act as normal as possible. I was curious, so I searched for more information about my mother in my grandmother's room. There were items from a long time ago, a few certificates and commemorative trophies with my mother's name on them. A cassette player and a few tapes. "What are you doing in here?" I was startled when I heard Grandma's voice. I honestly told her I wanted to know more about my mother. I asked Grandma for the cassette player and the tapes to take to my room and explore. Grandma agreed. I put the first 3 tapes into the player one by one. The content of these tapes helped me partly visualize a happy family scene. Birthdays of my brother and me, a lullaby, and I guessed it was my mother's voice. On the 4th tape, there were the sounds of a small child, but the audio was faint and interrupted frequently. I took it to my brother's room and asked him to help me with it. The tape might be faulty because it's been stored for a long time. I'll find a shop to get it fixed for you tomorrow. I waited eagerly with curiosity. It was almost a week before he brought the tape back. "Have you listened to the contents inside yet?" He shook his head. "I left it for you to listen to first." I smiled, hugged the cassette player and tape, and pulled him into the room. I put the tape in and pressed the button.
The static noise was followed by the giggles of two children, a boy and a girl.
Vincent! Carmela!
We startled and looked at each other. That was my sibling and me when we were young. The sound of the door opening and a very familiar voice.
Children should not lie. Tell me, what did your father do to Mother Sheila? Father took Mother's head.
The voice of the boy, exactly that of my older brother. I looked at him with wide open eyes, and he was equally shocked. My older brother hurriedly turned off the cassette player and hugged me. We wished we hadn't taken the tape to be fixed, but it was too late. My brother and I didn't dare to face it any further. If what we suspected was true, then Mother no longer existed. The one who took Mother's life was Father in an extremely ruthless way. Father still loved us dearly and made sure we lacked nothing. But what about the pain my mother endured and the torment Grandma has suffered for the past 14 years? For a week, after thinking everything through carefully, my brother and I expressed our feelings to Father and Grandma. My brother and I would continue living here with Grandma, while Father would start a new family elsewhere. Although it was very difficult and painful, we chose to move forward. I didn't want to learn about the past and those painful stories anymore, and neither does my brother. My brother and I have a bright and happy future ahead of us. We will take good care of Grandma. Mother Sheila is either very happy in a faraway place or still right beside us. I'm Oscar, 30 years old. I lived with my paternal grandmother since I was 5. In my small memory from that time, I don't remember everything exactly. I remember that I used to live in a different house with my parents. The memory is fragmented. Afterwards, I was moved to live with my grandmother. The reason for moving houses was later explained to me by my grandmother. Because my parents had jobs far away, and it wasn't convenient to take me along. Life with Grandma was also very happy. To her, I was everything. At first, I would often cry at night because I missed my mom. Every time I received a call from my parents, I would also cry. By the time I was about 6 or 7 years old, when I began to understand things a bit more, I asked my grandmother many questions about everything around me. The familiar spot at the dining table was that I sat on the left side, while my grandmother sat in the middle. Suddenly, I felt that something was missing. The scene before me was very familiar. It was the spot where I was sitting and the same dishes on the table. But there was something missing. Grandma, where's Alvin? That name suddenly popped into my mind, like a spring being released after being tightly compressed. My grandmother was stunned for a few seconds and said, "Do you mean Buddy? Isn't he over there enjoying a snack?" "No, I mean Alvin. I remember there was someone who used to sit and eat with us." "There's no one, dear. Hurry and eat before the food gets cold." Grandmother's face became serious as she continued eating. I didn't know how to explain that hazy memory to her. As time went on, I began to remember more images and fragmented memories of Alvin. In every corner of the house, in every nook and cranny. To be honest, I can't remember his face, and I'm not sure if Alvin actually existed. Whenever I remembered something, I would always ask my grandmother, "I'm fed up with that name Alvin already, Oscar. It might just be your imaginary friend." But I didn't think so. The feeling about Alvin was very real. He was completely different from my imaginary friends. Whenever my parents came to visit, I was very happy because there would be lots of toys and sweets. "Mom, do you know Alvin?" Hearing my question, my mother was stunned and stared at me. You remember Alvin?" I nodded innocently, continuing to chew on candy while telling my mother about it. "Not much. I just remember his name and that he seemed to have been here before." My mother quickly placed her hand on my shoulder and turned me to face her. "Do you remember where Alvin went?" "No. Do you know Alvin?" "Don't eat too many candies, Oscar. They're not good for your teeth and digestion." Grandmother appeared and interrupted my conversation with my mother. I ran over to show grandmother the items my mother had brought for me. "Candies again?" Grandmother looked at my mother with a somewhat irritated tone. My mother pulled me away, saying she would take me to the playground while my father stayed behind to talk with my grandmother. I was very happy on the days when my parents came to visit. Many times I asked my parents to either take me and grandmother with them or to stay here with us. My mother agreed, but asked me to wait a little longer. My parents left again, and I cried for a few days afterward because I missed them. But with grandmother by my side, things were okay again. One time I brought a school friend home to play after school. I proudly showed him grandmother's baked cheesecake. Grandmother smiled and told us to play only in the indoor area in the backyard, and not to go outside or open the gate for strangers. We obediently followed her instructions, playing together in the backyard while we waited for grandmother to bake the cake. Bubby played with us. When the ball rolled to the end of the yard, I ordered Bubby to go get it, but he didn't come back. Instead of paying attention to the ball, he kept sniffing something under the apple tree. I guess that Bubby must have found a fallen apple or something. My friend and I ran over to call Bubby. Bubby suddenly started barking loudly and digging non-stop under the apple tree. I yelled at Bubby to stop, saying that this was the apple tree grandmother loved and that we'd be in big trouble if we messed with it. I quickly picked up Buddy, but he continued to bark persistently at the apple tree. "What's going on?" Grandmother's voice startled us. Normally she was very gentle, but even just frowning was enough to make me scared. Bubby was locked in the kennel, and my classmate and I ate the cheesecake with a sense of unease. "What did you see?" Grandmother asked us with a frown. "No, we just saw Bubby digging in the dirt." I quickly spoke up to explain for my friend. After that day, my friend stopped coming over to my house. Grandmother built a very tall fence around the apple tree herself without calling a contractor. Bubby was sent to a relative's house while I was at school. I cried and begged grandmother to bring Bubby back, but her answer was no. One time I saw a car and several police officers at the neighbor's house. I quickly ran back to ask grandmother and found out that the neighbor's family had reported their youngest son missing. It seemed like I had seen this scene somewhere before. The police car, the sounds of crying, and the missing person information. All of it felt eerily familiar and vividly real. Had the police ever come to our house, Grandma? I remember it seems like... Stop saying meaningless things, Oscar. Come inside right away. Grandmother interrupted me and completely changed her demeanor. After that, I didn't question anything with grandmother anymore. I was afraid of seeing her displeased. When I finished elementary school, my mother came to pick me up and we left. I missed grandmother a lot and felt sorry that she had to live alone. When I was nearing the end of middle school, grandmother passed away from a stroke that wasn't treated in time. My family hurried back that night to prepare for her funeral. Looking back at the house with so many pictures and memories of Grandma woven into every corner, I can't stop crying. The apple tree in the backyard is heavy with ripe red fruit, falling all over the ground because no one is there to pick them. The fence Grandma built with her own hands has almost completely fallen down. Under the apple tree, a skull with half exposed, half buried in the ground. I looked carefully, and once I was certain of what I had seen, I rushed into the house to call my parents. Dad immediately ran to the backyard, while Mom collapsed right where she stood, gasping for breath. "Alvin! Alvin!" Mom kept murmuring that name in shock, ignoring all the questions I asked. Suddenly, Mom sprang up, dashed toward the garden, and screamed the name Alvin out loud. Kneeling under the apple tree, Mom kept sobbing and frantically digging up the earth. Dad tried to stop Mom, but he was met with a series of painful blows from her.
Dad told me to go inside and call the police with the ambulance. The scene repeated once again. The police car arrived at my house, and the crying. Yes, it was definitely Mom's crying. My mom was given a sedative by the medical staff and fell asleep, leaving only Dad to deal with the police. Under the apple tree, the police uncovered the remains of a 6-year-old boy and confirmed it was Alvin, my half-brother. That's why I always have fragments of memories of playing with him. Alvin went missing when I was a little over 4. The police also came to my house to investigate. Mom's desperate crying filled the air, and I stood in the room terrified, watching from the inside. Not being able to find him caused my mom to suffer from a severe mental crisis. Dad took me to live with Grandma, so Mom could have time to receive treatment. So Alvin had been lying there alone for 12 years, witnessing me playing and growing up every day. Grandma's no longer here, and everyone knows this is connected to her. But the reason remains unknown to everyone.
I'm Leon, living in New York. I'm very lucky to have a happy family. My parents have been together for more than 20 years. My brother, Jason, is 10 years older than me. He also has a small, happy family with his wife and daughter. That day was my parents' silver wedding anniversary. The whole family held a cozy party and took a commemorative photo together. My mother wore an old wedding dress. She was really beautiful at the age of 48. My father was also stylish in a white shirt. Parents said sweet words to each other. They thanked each other for their 25 years of companionship. My brother got his camera ready. My niece, Fiona, enjoys running around. My brother looked at Fiona happily and took a few pictures of her. When the whole family arranged a position to take photos, Fiona suddenly started crying and was not cooperating. Fiona is almost 2 years old this year. She walks quite well, but is slow to speak. She cried and then reached towards my mother as if she wanted my mother to hold her. When she sat on my mother's lap, she immediately became happy again. The whole family laughed because of Fiona's cuteness. Everyone looked at the camera and smiled brightly. After taking photos, everyone continued the party and danced together. More than a week after, my brother took the photos to be developed. After dinner, everyone brought out the photos to look at. I was startled when I held the photos in my hand. In the photos my brother took of Fiona, she was chasing a boy. The photo doesn't show his face clearly. Looking at his height, I guess the boy is about 3 years old. I quickly picked up the other photos to look at. In the family photo, that boy appeared again. That boy stood next to my mother, playing with Fiona. So she cried for my mother because she wanted to continue playing with that boy. I was startled again. In all the photos, I was not there. But the strange thing is that my parents did not have any questions or panic reactions when looking at the photos. They smiled and complimented my brother for taking beautiful photos. They didn't even see the other boy like me. Suddenly, my mother was thoughtful and then burst into tears. "I wish there were more Leon and Marcus in the family photo," my mother said with a choked voice. "Leon and Marcus? I'm Leon. I'm here, right? And who is Marcus? Are there any other family members that I don't know about?" The family atmosphere fell silent. No one paid attention to my questions. Except for Fiona, who ran to hug me as if to comfort me. I hugged Fiona, but a series of questions appeared in my mind. Looking closely at the family photo, that boy's face is very familiar. Another evening, I was in the bedroom with Fiona, who was very attached to me. We will play together for a while before the baby falls asleep. I stayed and watched Fiona for a while before returning to my room. But that day when I walked out the door, Fiona suddenly woke up. The little girl whined and asked me to stay. I quickly hugged Fiona to comfort her, and in just a moment she smiled. Fiona looked at me intently and she said,
"Friend."
When my sister-in-law heard Fiona crying, she also ran over worriedly. As soon as she entered, she witnessed Fiona's first words. My sister-in-law happily picked up the baby and ran to the room to show it to my brother. The happy laughter of the small family also made me laugh unconsciously. One beautiful morning, my parents wore black clothes and looked sad. My parents told me and my brother's family that they wanted to take us to visit some people. I was quite curious but didn't ask much, but did what my parents said. My family stopped the car in front of the gate of a large cemetery. I went last, following the whole family into the cemetery. My mother sadly knelt and cried at a grave. My father and brother tried to comfort her. Coming closer to look at the tombstone, I was shocked to see that the names printed on the tombstone were Marcus and Leon. Looking at the two small photos on the stele, I was startled to recognize the boy in the family photo. It turned out that boy's name was Marcus. The other photo is me, Leon. That boy and I only have different eye colors. Everything before my eyes gradually blurred. Echoing in my ears were the sounds of police cars and ambulances, followed by the sound of crying, the sound of my parents calling out Leon and Marcus's names in pain and helplessness. Before my eyes appeared the scene of the bodies of two twin boys covered in blood and open wounds. The two boys lay on top of each other in a pool of blood. A man holding a sharp knife stood looking at the bodies of two boys with wide eyes full of red veins. The tight pain throughout my body pulled me back to the present. My body was covered in scars. They began to bleed and hurt. My mother was still kneeling and crying next to the grave. Fiona walked up, pointed to the picture of me and Marcus on the grave and said,
"You."
I'm Lonnie, 18 years old, the only daughter in the family. My family lives in the town of Atherton, California. The name Lonnie that I have also reflects the love that everyone has for me. Since I was little, I have always been described as a healthy, beautiful, and nice girl. Perhaps many people would think that I am so beautiful, partly inherited from my parents. But no, my parents look very different. My father is much older than his age. I don't have any resemblance to my father. My mother has pale, sallow skin, a thin and lifeless body. The lines on my mother's face are very beautiful, but they are not well taken care of. I often see my mother sitting alone with a pale and tired face. I would run to hug her and ask if she was okay. Mom would always smile kindly, hug me tightly, and cry for a long time. I was educated by my parents, and especially my grandmother, to be a good girl and not putting my nose into other people's affairs. So I grew up in a cocoon of love and affection. I was carefree and obedient to adults. Even in situations I didn't like, I wouldn't resist or argue. Speaking of my grandmother, her name is Ira. My grandmother is very young and beautiful, completely different from my mother. My grandmother has fair, smooth skin, a firm and attractive figure, even though she's almost 60 years old. I know my grandmother is a single mother. She has only one child, my father. I have never seen her mention any other relative, and I also don't know anyone other than my father, mother, and grandmother. My grandmother's house is about a 30-minute drive from my house. My parents would take me to stay with her every weekend. My grandmother is very gentle. She teaches me to always love and take care of myself. Do not let any dirty marks appear on your skin because you will look very ugly. Your hair must always be fragrant and smooth. The clothes you wear must be the most beautiful and expensive. Do not eat food which origins are unknown. You must eat food prepared by your mother's own hands or prepared by me. Those are the things my grandmother always teaches me since I was little. Every weekend, staying with my grandmother made me very happy because I felt loved very much. One weekend, my parents took me to visit her. When she saw the small scratches on my nails, my grandmother got angry with my parents. On such occasions, I always saw my mother's face full of fear and panic. My mother dared not speak up. There's another strange thing. Every time my parents took me to visit my grandmother, my mother and grandmother would go into a separate room to talk. Dad and I would wait outside. I would look towards the door of my grandmother's room. It would be a long time before they came out. I would run to hug my mother again, every time I saw the fatigue and discomfort on her face. On my mother's hand, every time they came out of my grandmother's room, there would always be a plaster. My mother would try to shield it with her hand, but I always saw it. In the summer of the year I finished middle school, my grandmother said my parents should let me stay with her for a long time. During the days at my grandmother's house, I got to know a neighbor boy my age named Mike. Mike is kind and funny. We quickly became friends. One day, while playing with Mike, I accidentally slipped and fell. Mike quickly helped me up. Blood was flowing from my hand. I was worried that I would be scolded more than worrying about the wound. My grandmother suddenly appeared with a terrifying, angry face. She grabbed my hand, looked at the bleeding wound, took a deep breath. I thought she was trying to calm down. Mike, seeing my grandmother's angry face, stood frozen in fear. Both Mike and I seemed unable to breathe, staring intently at my grandmother. My grandmother held my hand, slowly led me closer to Mike. Then, my grandmother looked at me, looked at the wound on my hand, then turned to look at Mike. Very quickly, strongly, and decisively, my grandmother slapped Mike hard. She shouted loudly, demanding that Mike stay away from me forever. I looked at Mike, feeling guilty for my friend, but I didn't dare to speak up for him. I just bowed my head and remained silent, because I was very scared. My grandmother took me home. I always had to prepare mentally for her punishment. But grandmother gently sat down beside me, lifted my injured arm to observe. Then, my grandmother kissed the wound. I looked at her in surprise. My blood was smeared all over my grandmother's mouth. She looked at me, smiling kindly as usual, but mysteriously and frighteningly. She said she would help me bandage the wound and then lick the blood on her mouth, an expression of satisfaction. I was very scared. My emotions were chaotic. I sat there motionless, afraid to speak up, just silent. The terrifying strictness and surveillance of my grandmother as I approached the age of 18, it made me suffocate. I began to notice my mother's aging more and more clearly and quickly, while my grandmother's beauty seemed to last forever. I was old enough to understand and wanted to find out about everything. My grandmother always remained silent in the face of my questions. One evening, when my family was having dinner with my grandmother, my mother suddenly collapsed on the dining table and fainted. I worriedly tried to wake my mother up while my father called for an ambulance. I felt chilled by the indifferent gaze and the faint smile on my grandmother's lips. My mother was diagnosed with severe anemia and passed away after being hospitalized for a day. I was completely devastated. I lost one of my 3 closest relatives too suddenly. My mother's funeral was as cold and fleeting as the way my mother left me. I had to take nearly a month off from school because my mental state was unstable. One day, I came home from school. Passing by my parents' room, I suddenly heard my grandmother's voice. I gently approached to listen. "She's almost 18. Quickly find another replacement and nurture her well. Our bodies only suit the cleanest and purest things." I looked through the crack in the door, horrified to see an old, ugly woman with red glowing eyes drinking a bowl of blood. Blood dripping down her chin and neck. That elderly face gradually rejuvenated. Her eyes returned to normal. It was my grandmother. The drops of blood fell to the floor, being licked clean by my father, who knelt down. The satisfaction on their faces, along with the maniacal laughter,